Hey everybody, welcome back to another news roundup. Hope you guys been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. It is going on 9:30, so a little bit later, and I got the house to myself, so just relaxing. If you do hear the cat, she's just in one of her feeding fezzies. She's just wanting food stuff desperately. I can't say the word because then she's gonna come over. But we're back with another news roundup, and we got some interesting stuff to talk about, namely a couple of trailers and some other stuff. So we're just going to cut this short, as we always do, and we're just going to dive right on in. So the big story of the week, obviously, is with the release of what people are calling the Glicked weekend, aka Wicked and Gladiator 2 have both formally have come out, and we have some box office results to look here. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I think it's important to understand how much these films really need to do in order to justify their investments. So we're gonna look into it. So we're gonna first look at Wicked, which ended up doing the most money this weekend, bringing in a global debut of $164.2 million, and production cost is $150. Now, if you just look at it just like that, you may think, oh, that seems pretty good. Just to further illustrate the global debut and the potentially how good that actually stacks up. It is outpacing Barbie, which was, this is the effect that the Wicked and Gladiator are trying to replicate. And Wicked was able to do a little bit more than Barbie on opening weekend. Barbie was like 155, I think, so this did a little bit more. So if you want to look at it very specifically in that regard, there is something to that. But we have to consider marketing. So there's no exact figure out there, but I'm just going to guess at least 100 million. So as a general investment, we're probably looking at something like $250 million. And to break even with how I view box office, I usually take triple digit budgets and I times them by 3. Whereas the double digits, I do 2.5. So in this instance, if it's 250, you times that by 3. So we're looking at $750 million that this needs to make in order to break even. Now, that's not all you have to consider, though, when it comes to Wicked as a general investment, because this is a 2-film deal. We have this film, and then we have part 2 coming out next year. And both films have been greenlit, and both have production costs attached to them, both of which are at least $150 million. So you have a grand total production cost-wise for both movies sitting at $300 million. And again, we're not considering marketing in that equation either. So when you put marketing into that equation, if it's $100 million for marketing costs for the first film, and depending on how well it does over the course of the next few weeks, you're probably going to get marketing costs that are going to match in the same. So for marketing for both films, it'll be $200 million. And as a general investment overall for both Wicked Part 1 and Wicked Part 2, you're looking at potentially a $500 million investment. So as we times that by 3, the break-even point for both films to do would be $1.5 billion. So if you divide that by 2, that means each film has to make at least $750 million in order to justify this entire investment. So we'll see. I mean, it is leading a stronger opening than Barbie did, which, like I said, by comparison is noteworthy. But it really depends on the momentum. I mean, we'll see how next week translates because Moana 2 is coming out, so we'll see. But briefly discussing also Wicked's other film, of course, the competitor, Gladiator 2, they had a global debut of $221 million, which is including the international debut that happened the week before the domestic release. And in this instance, though, I'm saying we're looking at a failure because production costs alone were $250 million. And we know the marketing cost was $100 million. So the general investment overall for Gladiator 2 is $350 million. And times that by 3, at least on my ratio, the break-even point for Gladiator 2 would have to be $1.50 billion. So yeah, I think this is pretty much a flop in the making. I don't see any longevity for Gladiator 2. I think it's going to be likely the lesser of the three in competition, the third of which includes Moana 2. Um, yeah, those aren't strong numbers for Gladiator 2. Now, in the case of Wicked, it really depends on the second weekend. It really depends on the drop off and, if those numbers hold. So we'll see then ultimately if it furthering in its investment or furthering its success. But I think it's safe to say that this is not taking off as did Barbie and Oppenheimer, and it was never going to. I mean, we all knew this. I mean, this is just marketing stunt. They're going to do it again with Sonic and Mufasa, so they're just trying to bank on something that's just clearly not going to happen. So in this instance, this is just one film trumping another, and large investments that are needing longevity to see a true return on their investment. For Wicked, we'll have to wait and see. I have my trepidations, but I'm also fairly optimistic. So we'll see how the second weekend goes for that. For Gladiator 2, I think it's safe to say that it's basically done. I think this is not going to end well. I think it's probably going to end up doing, say, 400, 500 million once it's all said and done. And with an investment like 350 million, that's not a good sign. So promise for Wicked, not so much for Gladiator 2. So alrighty, let's get into some other topics for today. So the first one I want to talk about, this one just kind of went under the radar, and I think the company kind of wants it to be that way. With regards to Juror number 2. Now, we did discuss about Juror number 2. This is Clint Eastwood's latest and potentially last film. And we discussed a lot about the inside decisions regarding this film, about putting it theatrically, and a lot of the doubts that were happening at Warner Brothers. And they did end up going forward with a theatrical run. It was a very quiet, limited run. Didn't play in a lot of theaters. And so much so that they didn't even want to put out any box office numbers for the film. So that basically tells you just they wanted to bury it. They just didn't want people to see it because they had no faith in it. But apparently they are rolling out a streaming release for Juror number 2 on HBO Max for December 20th. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because of how they're choosing to market this release. It's not just the fact that they're putting it out on streaming, it's the fact that it is being billed under the release banner of a quote-unquote Max original. Now, for that, what that means is that this is exclusive to streaming. We're putting this out here for the very first time on our streaming platform. That's what the insinuation of putting the Max original label does. So in doing so, they're insinuating that this is the official release for the movie, not an additional release to their streaming platform, which is really what it is. They're, in essence, basically trying to market the film as an exclusive to that platform with the hopes to capitalize on the current reception that is out there, because there's been some good reception for the film, even if that's not what is currently happening with the film. So yeah. So they're hoping that you just forgot about, it being released in theaters. They're hoping that you just forgot about that, and then we can, just just do some damage control and go, oh, well, no, this is actually a Max original. This is the very first time that the film's getting released. It's just, yeah. Like, this is the result of the reception of the film. This is literally what it's about. This is because the people are receiving it well, and because of that, they're now desiring to profit off that word of mouth by twisting the truth of its release. And that's fucked. That's really fucked. This was supposed to go to streaming initially, if you guys remember, which by all accounts it should have done anyway. I mean, if you're going to just not report any box office numbers and you had little faith in the project to begin with, you might as well just dumped it on streaming if in fact you were going to move forward with it. But going from having a limited theatrical run, of which the studio didn't want to market, all of a sudden turning this now into a Max original release, as if it's the first time that the film is getting a release, like, they'll be cheeky about it. They'll say like, oh no, this is the first wide release to not make it seem a certain way, Oh no, guys, no, that was a limited run. This is the first wide release. See? But we all know what they mean by billing it that way. And of course, if you follow the history of this, it's like, yeah, there was no plan for this to come out exclusively to streaming. So yeah, they're full of shit when they say this. And trust me, if no one liked the film, they wouldn't be doing this. They would just left to be buried and forgotten. But because people generally seem to be enjoying it, they're now backtracking, and they're trying to salvage their investment when they didn't have faith in it at the start. Now, I supported their decision to just bury it initially because of their unwillingness to dump it on streaming. Like, you should have just dumped it on streaming to begin with. Because, I mean, it wasn't going to make money in theaters, even if it had a wider run, if it had a larger marketing campaign behind it. It just wasn't going to happen, okay? So putting it on streaming was the best decision. But going about it this way, it's just really shady, if you ask me. It's a great example of deceiving your consumers. Because don't be fooled, this already came out. They were wanting to put this in theaters, and then they got cold feet about it, and then they just said, no, we don't want to market it. We don't even want to share the box office numbers to you. So they're just trying to make some money. They're just trying to make money by lying to you. And that's sad. So, yeah. Now, that all being said, I will eventually watch it because I actually am curious. But it doesn't change the fact that, yeah, that's real shady. And that's really deceiving to your consumer. So pretty fucked up. Pretty fucked up, especially for the reasoning behind it. It's for profit. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's just really, really just slimy. So. Alrighty, speaking of slimy decisions, kind of, let's talk about something that we talked about, I want to say like a few months ago, and that was in regards to a sequel to Wolves. This is a film that came out this year on Apple TV+. It was originally supposed to go to theaters. It starred Brad Pitt and George Clooney. It was directed by John Watts. They announced a sequel to Wolves about, I want to say like a month or so, or a week or so before the first film came out. And at the time I thought it was a weird announcement, and apparently it was, because it has been canceled. And according to an interview conducted by Collider, the director himself, John Watts, himself had confirmed that a sequel wouldn't be happening, with Variety, who reported the story, confirming inside sources familiar with the situation. And then after the announcement of the cancellation was made, John Watts also further explained that the reason behind the cancellation was in result of him stepping away from the project due to Apple's handling of the original film, which, again, as we've illustrated, saw them shipping the film off to the streaming right before rolling out a theatrical run, which in his eyes apparently left kind of a sour taste in his mouth. So So yeah, no Wolves 2. It is not no longer happening. And really, I mean, there was no reason for this deal to have existed. Like, there's no reason for a Wolves 2 to have had to happen. Um, Firstly, I don't even think the film did well. I mean, we don't have any numbers outside of Apple stating that, oh no, it did the best on our streaming service that weekend. It's like, there's no metric that, I mean, you're talking about Apple TV Plus, the lesser of the streaming services, the streaming service that probably nobody really desires to go to. So you're by your metric of what's doing good, it's probably doing real bad. So, um, and I still believe that the only reason that this announcement was made was because Apple was trying to look good towards their investors, and clearly that didn't seem to work, considering all their recent failures like Fly Me to the Moon, Argyle, which was their biggest one, and probably including this film, Wolves. So, and remember, they scrapped a theatrical release not because of some weird thing. John Watts. I mean, I know he's, I know he was wanting what he was promised, in that respect. But I mean, it's a company, financing and producing. They ultimately have the say on what they can do with the project. I mean, not necessarily you. So, you know, because they scrapped the theatrical release because they saw the writing on the wall. They knew that this film was not going to make money. And if I'm not mistaken, it's $100 million. I believe it is like something like $100 million budget. So I don't. Yeah, it was not going to do that great. And it's all strategy. It's all strategy because they did this. They dumped it on the service to cover their losses. They're trying to prevent themselves from looking like morons. So they try to put it on streaming in hopes to gain some traction, but they also knew in their hearts to hearts, like, okay, this is just going to be a place for us to just dump it so that we don't have to, see another loss because they've been making so many losses lately. Just again, distributing their fucking projects to other companies, but it's like, just distribute it yourselves. Like, what the fuck? Um, but yeah, in the end, they still look like morons. And there was no point for this to exist. There was no point for them to do a sequel to Wolves. And it's good to see Apple finally owning up to that to some respect. So yeah, you ain't getting Wolves 2. And given how Apple is as a company currently and their decision making, I think that's for the best. So, alrighty, we got a couple of trailers to discuss for today, and then we're just gonna call it a day. So let's just get into it. So the first trailer we're going to discuss is the official trailer for a Minecraft movie. Now, we talked about the first trailer, and I wasn't that mad by it. So there's a lot of people who are frustrated by it, and I think some of that frustration is still there with this new trailer. I echo the same feelings I had with the first trailer. I mean, yeah, aesthetically, it's a bit concerning. I don't like how apparently there's a lot of practical elements. You wouldn't be able to tell because of just how that green screen is integrated. It just makes everything look so like CG and animated. I mean, there's a lot of VFX and animation taking place in those frames, but a lot of the centerpieces, a lot of the forefront elements, I guess, are practical elements according to some behind the scenes stuff. But it's not completely without merit. It's just infuriating to me to see how that green screen and those live action integrations, like, it's just distracting, and it buries a lot of the efforts made in those departments. Practically speaking, it just buries a lot of those efforts, and yeah, just by how it looks, it is still questionable. I just don't think that it's completely purposeless. I also can't tell if the performances are intentionally half-baked or are actually flavorless. I'm leaning more towards the latter because I just don't buy anybody. They all seem very out of place, And I'm not just saying like miscasting. It just literally they all just seem so out of place. Um, so it's not much for me. I mean, there's some charisma that I guess that could be salvaged to lift it into some realm of mediocrity, like just by the overall mood of the trailer. It's not completely, completely without some intrigue, but it's also not as bad as the internet is making it out to be. But it's definitely not great either. Definitely not great. So. All right. The next trailer we're going to discuss is we have the official teaser trailer for How to Train Your Dragon, the live action remake of the first film, I believe. This stars Mason Thames, Nico Parker, Gerard Butler, and Nick Frost, being written and directed by Dean DeBlose, the guy behind the How to Train Your Dragon trilogy. So he's back to helm this live-action adaptation. Has a release date of June 13th, 2025. And, well, I'm not really big on How to Train Your Dragon. I've seen the third one, only because a good friend of mine really enjoys the series, so he wanted to watch it. I was kind of curious. I remember liking it. I don't remember loving it too much. It's definitely not resonated with me because I can't remember shit about it. But going off the trailer, the growing awareness of the root of my response to this trailer is discovered upon the reveal of Toothless when he's standing beside our main character. The aesthetic isn't complimentary in a live action medium. It's an example of what happens when you're too faithful. And I know it sounds a bit contradictory because so many people want that. They want it to be faithful. They want things to look the way they do. And it does look a lot like How to Train Your Dragon, at least to my memory of it. It definitely reminds me a lot of it. But it's to say it isn't the right approach, at least in this respect, because like the visual presentation, like from the costumes to the designs of the dragons, like it being so loyal to the original source material, it actually comes across more fan-made, like weirdly fan-made, than being well integrated. So, and it goes without saying this is highly unnecessary. Like given the fact that the last animated feature was like 5 years ago, 2019. So, yeah, it's way too soon to be doing anything like this. Way too soon. And I just personally don't care. Like I said, I don't have much love for the series, much of an investment either. I know it's got an audience, and it certainly has the look. I just doubt that look lends itself, especially being faithful to the appearances. I don't think it lends itself to a live action medium. I think adjustments just need to be made to make this work. That's just how I feel about it. I mean, I just think some adjustments here and there may have salvaged the look for me, like doing something like a Pete's Dragon. Do you remember Pete's Dragon? That Pacific live action adaptation that I actually really enjoyed. If it was something to that effect, then maybe it would have won me over a little bit more. But aesthetically, it just speaks a lot on more of a fan-made type trailer than something from a studio. And again, that's just my opinion. So. Alrighty, we have one more trailer to discuss. I wasn't going to talk about it, but I don't know, kind of interesting to talk about. That's a trailer for a film called Parthenope. I don't know if I'm saying the name right, my apologies. Latest from A24, this stars Celeste Dalla Porta and Gary Oldman. This is being written and directed by Pablo Sorrentino, guy behind The Hand of God, which I was curious to see but never got around to seeing it, and Loro. This has a release date of February 7th, 2025, and look, I'm just, like, these sort of stories, I just don't see any satisfaction in, because this is basically the story of a hoe. I mean, by what she is, by her purpose, by what they're choosing to emphasize within her character, it's just a filthy, filthy kind of person. And where's the gratification? Where's the satisfaction in trying to sympathize with such a character? Like, I get what they're trying to get at. It's like, oh, she's so seductive, and oh, she's also very intelligent, aka very manipulative. Intelligence within filth like this, because I'm sorry, people like this are just disgusting. It just amounts to that. Disgusting results. Nothing more and nothing less. And it's a gimmick now. Like, this is seriously becoming a weird gimmick, like a weird misogynistic gimmick to some extent, where it's using women as tools, presenting them as literal fucking tools, And I think that's just, I think that's degrading. Like, I don't get why why these, like, actresses think it's so liberating to act this way now on screen. It's like, it's really not. Because it is a gimmick now to show a gorgeous woman as a dominant force. It has become that. And in my view, anyway, like, it's so pitiful. It's not understandable. It's super pitiful. Like, I don't see anything more than a hoe with brains. That's literally it. There's nothing sexy. There's nothing creative. There's nothing insightful about someone really this pathetic and disgusting. Like, someone in the comments of this trailer, like, said it best. It's basically Challengers 2. Like, yeah, it couldn't have said it any better than myself. I really didn't like Challengers for the very same reasons. I don't understand why it's liberating to show a woman who is so vile, so disgusting, and yes, gorgeous, but it's how they utilize themselves, how they represent themselves. It's just the description of a whore. Like, there's nothing to derive from that except just filth. It's disgusting. And again, very, very fucking degrading. So I'm just surprised. Apparently this is not getting great reviews either. Apparently it was showed in festivals and people were not that crazy about it. Based on that trailer, I didn't get much except what I've described. Yeah. So not really for me. Really not for me. And I think, again, for that actress, I feel she should be a bit embarrassed for taking on a role like that, because that's just, there's nothing valuable to what you're doing. Literally nothing valuable at all. At least if you ask me. So, but yeah, those are my thoughts for this week, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. Some interesting topics here and there. Talking about, of course, the Wicked and Gladiator 2 box office. Talked about Juror number 2 and some weird fucking shit going on there. Wolves 2 being canceled, and of course some interesting trailers. Minecraft, How to Train Your Dragon, Parthenope. You guys let me know all your thoughts on all these topics in the comment section below. And that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.